Good morning, Luke. How are you doing, sir?
Good. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you so much for speaking to me. I really appreciate it, sir.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for inviting me. Excited to talk to you.
Uh-huh. No, no, first of all, where the hell have you been all of my reading life? Because I'd never read you before, and this is a fantastic. I just loved it to bits, man. So congratulations, it's such a fantastic book.
Oh, thank you. I'm really glad that you enjoyed it. It was a fun one to write.
Fun. I'm not sure. I wouldn't have said fun was the word for reading it because
Well,
of because of where this guy goes through, but
yeah.
I guess it was. I guess it was kind of cathartic in a way to you to kind of get these kind of emotions out. I don't know how personal they were, but I guess it was kind of something that came from. I mean, most
Yeah, very,
books come from a
very
personal space, so I imagine that was kind of something that was very cathartic for you, know?
cathartic is a good word. Yeah, it felt easy to write because of
Yeah.
that. It felt natural, maybe more than, although some parts are fun for sure. Seeing him get his revenge was kind of fun.
No, yeah, there was some really laugh out loud moments that I wasn't expecting, because I knew it was going to go down a really dark place, but I don't often. It's difficult to make me laugh, especially when I'm reading a book. I don't usually laugh, but I found myself when I was commuting to work and stuff laughing on the train and kind of not trying not to laugh too hard because I don't like people looking at me and so okay, what's this guy laughing at? So yeah, it had some really nice dark humor in there. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Uh-huh. So I mean, before I even speak, I was stalking you on Instagram. I spotted that you'd just been into the. Is it the Natural History Museum? Have you been there today or was it yesterday?
Yesterday. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
It was
No, the reason I ask is that something to do with maybe a paleontologist? I've not read that book, but a paleontologist sequel or something? Is that
It's I am just like really into dinosaurs and
right?
paleontology. So I hadn't been to that museum and I hadn't been to the La Brea Tar Pit since I was a kid. It's like, hey, had to go up and check it out.
Uh-huh.
Um, but yeah, I mean I love the paleontologist. So I would definitely love to write more in that world.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I've not
Yeah.
read that. I jumped straight on and ordered it. I'm living in Spain, so it's not easy to get hold of. I've ordered it straight away, so
Oh,
can't wait to read that one as well. Yeah.
thank you. Thank you.
Uh-huh. But so getting down to this book, then I mean the first question I wanted to ask you is when I was reading it, it reminded me a little bit of. I don't like to compare books to other books, but obviously there's certain things that it reminded me of from other books that I've loved in beforehand. When I was reading this, it reminded me a lot of Ottessa Moshfegh's My Year Rest and Relaxation. I don't know if you've read that one,
I haven't.
but it's very kind of she has very what's the word I'm looking for? It's kind of it's like a fever dream almost. There's certain things that she wakes up all of a sudden she's done things that she has no idea that she's done with, and that kind of really kind of took me back to that. And then also it reminded me of kind of the rage that Carrie goes through in
Yeah.
Stephen King's Carrie, and then another film I don't know if you're familiar with When Animals Dream, which was kind of like a werewolf story. Obviously, this isn't a werewolf story, but it has elements of kind of a werewolf story in a way. Would you kind
Mm.
of say that was fair?
I haven't read that one either.
That's a movie. That's a movie. That last one.
Oh, that's a movie. Yeah, I didn't think of werewolves, but that's actually a very good sort of.
Oh, you've frozen up a second there.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's yeah. You're back on again. Yeah, sorry. No, you just froze up there. Yeah.
Oh, sorry about that. Um, so yeah, I mean, I hadn't thought about werewolves, but definitely that's a good comparison for what
Hmm.
Emmett goes through. Carrie is definitely a big influence for me, just generally. I really like, I would say that's my favorite Stephen King novel. And I really like the way that hold, sorry, my dog is being very silly. Holly, stop. Sorry.
No
So
problems.
yeah, I really like the way he uses these sort of epistolary elements
Right.
woven throughout the narrative, and so that's something that I've done in a couple of my books, my debut as well. So that was definite. And then you also, like you mentioned, you have the rage of Carrie and sort of getting back at her bullies. And so, yeah, that's definitely present in this. I think that's a really good comp.
Uh-huh. And were there any specific kind of influences or kind of
Oh,
other genres that aren't specifically related to this one that were a heavy inspiration towards kind of this book?
yeah. I mean, this book was heavily influenced by Thinner, Stephen
Right.
King's Thinner, which was the first horror novel or adult novel I ever read. I read it when I was
Right, that was the
13.
first one. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the first. I mean, I was so like I was, a chubby kid, and I was just really taken by this idea. First of all, the protagonist of that book is a fat guy, and you don't see too many of those. I had never
Right.
seen that before, and you still don't see too many of those
Yeah.
actually. Um, so I loved that, and the idea of him sort of losing weight at inhuman speed was. I loved that because that was sort of my dream as a little fat kid. Like, oh, if I could just wake up and be thinner, if I could just, snap my fingers and lose 5 pounds, my life would be good. But he sort of, King turns it into a nightmare. Be careful
Yeah.
what you wish for. And so I always loved that concept and held on to that and wanted to write something like that for years and years. I mean, I knew I wanted to do something like this for maybe 20 years.
Right.
And I knew I wanted it to be quite different than Thinner, to feel
Hmm.
different. And so, having this sort of clinical trial overlay, I mean, that came long before Ozempic was a thing. I
Sure.
knew I wanted it to be about a drug. And then Ozempic did become a thing, and it was such a cultural moment that we're having with these weight loss drugs. So that just it felt like perfect timing. But I always, yeah, I Thinner was really the original inspiration for the book.
Uh-huh. I mean, it's curious you said that. I've never had a problem with my weight. Well, I've never had a problem with being overweight, but I had exactly the opposite problem. I was always the skinny kid at school, and I
Mm.
was so obsessed with gaining weight as any way possible. And that, even though the book is completely the opposite way around, it just really resonated with me saying in such a big way, having lived kind of the exact opposite kind of prejudice at school, if you will.
I've heard that from a few people,
Yeah.
which is really good to hear that it has more, because I wrote it, from my perspective and thought like, okay, people who have shared that perspective will maybe relate to it, but others won't. So it's good that it seems to have more universal relatability.
100%. Yeah.
I think everyone, to a degree, has some sort of insecurity. Even people we would look at and think they should not have any insecurity, they do. And so there are feelings of just not being good enough or not being right in your body and not measuring up that I think a lot of people can relate to in this.
Definitely. So, something I love to ask all authors, because it's pretty much it's a done thing, is for there to be some kind of epigraph or various epigraphs at the beginning of a book. So I'm quite curious why you specifically chose a quote from Charles Dickens' The Pickwick Papers. Was that something that came after after the fact, after you'd written the story, or was it something that kind of inspired the story, and then that was why you decided to use it at the beginning of the book?
It came after. It
Right.
was really hard for me to find to like settle on an epigraph. I had originally chosen two quotes that were from more modern books. One of them was from Roxane Gay's memoir, Hunger, a Memoir of My Body.
Hmm.
And then there was another book, a sort of academic book called Fat Boys. And I loved these quotes so much, but you have to pay to use them.
Right.
And it was going to be thousands of dollars to
Uh-huh.
use literally like 3 sentences. And so it's like, okay, let me try to find something that's in the public domain. And I really struggled. I think because we didn't think about, like, obviously, fat and obesity was a very different issue, 100 years ago than it is
Sure.
today. And male fatness was not something that was really talked about or
Criticized.
thought
Yeah.
about and criticized. Yeah, I mean, it had such different connotations in, for example, like Victorian England. Like it didn't, none of the quotes that I could find really resonated. Was so flattened. Like he was just his fat. He was just like he wasn't a real, excuse me, he wasn't a real person.
Yeah.
He was just kind of like this idiot. And there was something about that particular quote where I want to make your flesh creep. Like it was this like feeling of I want to get back at you or I want to hurt you. It was, and he's even called the fat boy. Like he just became, I don't know. There was something about that that felt a little unsettling in the way that he presented his malice. And I thought, oh, that kind of works for this.
Uh, there are a couple to that. A very specific quote that the main character Emmett, he's called Emmett. He says that he feels a greasy combination of sad, smug, guilty, and cruel all the way through because even though he wants revenge, even though he's angry with people, at the same time, although he resents these people, he also feels empathy and feels kind of bad for feeling those feelings. So I'm quite curious. I mean, you said you had fun writing the book. But I mean, I imagine you went through all of these emotions as well, this roller coaster of different emotions while you were writing the book yourself as well, no?
I mean, I just wanted to present my authentic experience. Like I can't say this is the experience of being a fat
Yeah,
person in the world because there are lots of different ways to
sure.
to experience that. But for me, like that is something that I've always had. I have always experienced like this push and pull of sort of superiority and low self-esteem. So like when I'm feeling at my lowest, maybe I'm wanting to watch a show like My 600-Pound Life and feel smug and feel good because, well, at least I'm not that bad.
Not
At
bad.
least I'm
Yeah.
not that big. At least I can take care of myself. Or you walk into a room and like the first thing I would always do is think, am I the biggest person in the room? You could sort of scan around. And sometimes there was someone bigger and think, oh, well, at least I'm not as it's terrible. And I would feel bad because I would find myself judging people in the same way that I feared being judged. And I knew it was a coping mechanism just to sort of
Yeah.
move through the world and not feel so bad all the time. But I don't think that's something that we acknowledge a lot in stories about people who struggle with their weight. I think they can be just sort of um they're just sad and like we feel bad for them, but they're always like morally pure, right? Like there isn't a lot of complexity there. And I
Uy, you cut off again.
sorry.
No, it's okay. You just cut off for a little snippet then there.
Oh, sorry. Where did you lose me? Um, so
It
I
was
was
just
just
about
saying,
2 seconds.
okay. So I just wanted, yeah, something that felt a bit more honest and a bit more nuanced in
Yeah.
in the portrayal of a fat character and what the psychology is like just moving through the world. And so those words that you read, like those that kind of um that sort of captures how he feels and how I've felt at many times
Uh-huh.
when I feel that I'm in that push and pull.
Yeah, I mean that was all. It also felt very universal to me because I mean, there's so much toxicity, especially now with kind of Instagram and well, social media in general. And I get the feeling. I'm pretty sure. I mean, I can't generalize, but I imagine 99% of those people, the hate that gets poured onto there from these keyboard warriors is to make themselves feel better. No, and I just kind of felt that that really kind of encapsulated that perfectly. That kind of the feelings that Emmett was going through.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's fair. And he is so influenced by social media and the online sphere. And yeah, picking up some of that toxicity as well, even though he hates it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we talked about there a little bit about kind of like this internal volatile push and pull of
Mm.
comfort and fear of people's own thoughts, which is something that you address in the book. Which really, like I said, when I was a kid, I was very thin, so it really kind of made me wrestle with the ideas that I've had about kind of inferiority, about being so skinny or maybe shyer than other people, those kind of things. Um, I'm quite curious how I mean, you said that you're really glad that people have resonated with it, even though that they haven't wrestled with the exact same things that Emmett has gone through. But I imagine while you were writing it, it was important for you to kind of make sure that it was universal. And even though it was specifically kind of more about losing weight or being overweight and feeling kind of on the fringe because of that. How did you approach kind of making sure that other people would resonate with that, even if they've kind of not gone through that, or even if they've done things, bullied fat people when they're kids, for example, or those kind of things?
I didn't think consciously about trying to make it relatable. I think I always trust that if I can tap into something very true, something honest, and that really is coming from like a deep well of emotion, people will tap into that. They will feel it. And I will say on this topic of like fat and body image in nonfiction before, like several years ago, I wrote some essays, did some, like storytelling, open mic kind of events.
All right.
And I was very surprised to find that the people who would come up to me after would say, "Oh my God, I related to this so much." And they looked nothing like I would expect them to look. And so I knew that people could and would relate to Emmett's feelings if I could just present them authentically. And so actually, I think by making it more specific, by putting more of me on the page, it has actually opened up that feeling of universality and more than any of the characters I've written, I've seen readers tell me that they related to this more than any, or that they felt more seen by this character than any other character. I think that's really interesting. But yeah, my approach to it was just put myself on the page, put a unique perspective that I hadn't seen, but that felt true, and just
Uh-huh.
believe that people will respond to it. And I think they are.
Uh-huh. And something that I loved as well was that there's this kind of this a ripple effect, a domino effect on Emmett's family.
Mm.
Um, was it important for you to show how these feelings ripple through his family relationships from the beginning, or was that something that kind of surprised yourself when you were writing? Did they come more organically eventually, or was it something that you kind of, like you said, you wanted to make it as personal as possible to make sure it was a universal, people could understand it from a different perspective. So was that kind of that sharing yourself on the page? Was that how we end up seeing the ripples in the family as well
It
as a
is.
result of his weight loss and what's going on in the story?
For sure. There's maybe too much of me on the page at some points, and like the family relationships are one area you could say there's maybe a bit too much insight. But I would say from the beginning it was important. Like I didn't do that just because I wanted to write about my family. I didn't. I
Oh,
wanted to
no.
write a character that like I wanted to give some insight into at least how I see my family dynamics having impacted my relationship with food, my relationship with self-image, um, binge eating disorder, all these things. Like I do think there is sometimes, again, fatness or the way we eat can be flattened in society, and we think of it as purely that are fat because they don't have self-discipline. They eat too much, they're greedy, they make bad choices. Maybe we think they don't understand the difference between healthy food or
Mhm.
I wanted to show something more nuanced and psychological. I
Uh-huh.
wanted to highlight that the reason why we choose foods and the reason why we have compulsions to eat are very complex. They might come from your family dynamics and the way you were raised. They might come from your social standing, like what you have access to. They come from a food system that is just like lab, these foods are terrible. They're created
Yeah.
in a lab to make you want to eat and eat and eat, even though you're full. Like all these things come into play. And so it was very important to show that Emmett didn't come from like a perfect, happy family. There was love, and it wasn't universally terrible. Like he wasn't constantly surrounded by bullies. There were people who really cared for him and wanted to help him, but also the ways in which they tried to help him weren't always that helpful. And I just I wanted to build that complexity around his story so that we can empathize more with his complexity and why weight loss is not straightforward for him, even though many people might think it is. Diet and exercise, right? That's all
Right.
you have to do, but it's so much more complex than that.
Mhm. I mean, just kind of by extension of that, you said there that you didn't want to spill yourself into the book and maybe some of your some things that have that happen in your family. But I mean, I imagine your family read your books as well, no? And are they like, Luke, are you referencing me here? I hope you're not. Do do you get that kind of thing?
I'm usually pretty upfront
Uh-huh.
with them when I'm gonna write about something that I know they're gonna see themselves in.
Right.
Um, my family, some of them read the books and some don't.
Mhm.
And I I definitely warned my mom that she was going to be in this book.
Right.
But she was happy with it. She's like, well, it was a very compassionate take on that character. So didn't burn haven't burned any bridges yet. Um, but also, I want to write something authentic. I want to write
Uh-huh.
something true. And like for me, what that is, it's what I know. It's what has affected me. And eventually I will have to I will have to branch out, maybe to someone else's family.
No, but I mean, I really appreciated the kind of the family relationship, especially the parents, because a parent myself with two teenage kids, you're always learning and you never really know how you should react and how you should treat someone going through something, especially if you haven't been through that yourself. And that was something that really resonated with me in the book. It really kind of shone through the story.
That's good because I don't want, even though the mother character is flawed, I didn't want her to be a villain. Like she's
Yeah.
not a villain. She's very loving, and I think you do get that she tried her best. And also she's maybe grappling with a lot of the same fat phobic and patriarchal messages that Emmett is, and inadvertently passing those things on while trying to be helpful. Um, it's really not easy. And there are no easy answers to these questions. There's no easy solution. And I'm glad that it felt like a humane or compassionate
Yeah, no,
or understanding take.
yeah, no, I really appreciate it because none of them are all out villains. They do things that are you could consider villainous, but they're
Mm,
not kind of out of spite or out of kind of anger for a specific reason or yeah, which is what I
right.
really appreciated about it. Yeah. Uh-huh. And one specific moment in the book that I really and really enjoyed that kind of really stood out for me was the fact when Emmett and his best friend's flatmate Lizette they go
Mhm.
to a museum and they come across this kind of decrepit exhibit which is called Race Are We So Different? And Emmett
Mhm.
kind of imagines it as if it was fat are we so different? Which kind of led him to consider whether fatness is something that can be compared to race, gender, or sexuality. And a lot of people will argue that, and in the book it says this a lot, that being fat is not an identity, but rather it's a lifestyle choice. Um, and also that you went go on to mention that fat shaming isn't a protected class in the eyes of the law. It's still fair game. So I'm
Mm.
guessing that was kind of a very big factor that kind of played towards kind of the genesis that played part of the genesis of the story as well.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I think about a lot. I think for me, fat is it's one of the last remaining acceptable forms of prejudice in our society. Um, And I do think we made a lot of progress on it, but not to the degree that we've made some of these other protected classes where they're protected by law, you can't discriminate. But we know that people do get discriminated for their size. It happens all the time. And that makes me very angry. I
Mhm.
don't know if there are definitely schools of thought that would say that fat is an identity in the same way sexuality, gender. those things. Um, and fat studies is a thing. It's an academic thing. Um, so I still think these are open questions. I try to approach all of these things as open questions and things that Emmett is grappling with, not that he has firm answers for, because I don't necessarily feel like I have firm answers for them all the time. I do think it's I do think there's discrimination in society against fat people that is relatively accepted, or at least not questioned. Like we don't
Yeah.
interrogate why we maybe have made judgments about someone or why we would assume someone is a certain way based on their size. And I hope in time we will start to think about it in a more nuanced way. And I really hope that this book is something that will help readers do that. If they haven't experienced um, Emmett's issues with identity or body image, then maybe they can think from the other perspective. Like, have I said something like that was really intended to be kind, but I just wasn't thinking about it from a different perspective. Um, so yeah, I hope from all angles that the book can help people build some empathy for themselves, for others,
Hmm.
and think more critically.
Yeah. Along those same lines, there's also a specific mention of Susie Orbach, who I wasn't aware of who she was actually, but she's often suggested kind of that fat issues were only women's problems, like you said earlier, that in kind of medieval times, men men being overweight wasn't criticized, it wasn't seen as something as a problem, and she says the same kind of things. Um, and that the obsession with women's weight is not about health, it's about men being able to control women, and that men may be fat, but their social value is less tied to size. For women, the personal is political, and our bodies are battlegrounds for cultural expectations. So did you also intend kind of for the book to be to serve as a kind of a pushback, or was it your intention for it to be a pushback against that kind of way of thinking?
Not necessarily because I agree with Susie Orbach. I do think
Right.
fat is an issue that affects women more and differently than men. I wanted to maybe deepen that conversation a little bit. I think we don't, because we have thought of fat as a feminist issue for so long, and there are so many great female authors writing on that subject, we've kind of ignored male fatness um, as an issue or as an identity or as a unique experience. And I there aren't any there like I've been trying to find that. So I wanted to give a perspective, like give this story from a male perspective. Um, Also, I think one thing that I think about a lot is like Emmett's identity is intersectional. He's fat, but he's also gay. And so thinking about it from this queer perspective, the queer male perspective in particular, I think Emmett sort of aligned himself with women when he was younger
Right.
in a way that many gay men do. And because of that, I think he maybe absorbed some of those patriarchal, fat phobic messages that are typically directed at women in a way that they're not directed at men. But they've sort of bounced off, or his mom might have absorbed them, or his sister might have absorbed them, and he just by osmosis,
Right.
he got them. And I think in that way, maybe gay men have a different relationship with their body or with fat than straight men would because of that sort of social alignment with something that's more feminine. I just think it was an interesting thing to think about. It's something that I've, again, thought about in my own life quite a bit. Why I feel so uh, insecure or have felt so insecure about my body in ways that I didn't necessarily feel like my straight peers were feeling, my straight male peers in particular were feeling. Um, and so yeah, that's something I wanted to explore with that.
Uh-huh. Also, Emmett throughout the book, he's hyper vigilant all the time because of what he's been going through. He's always worried about how he'll be seen because of his weight.
Mm.
Um, And to quote you from the book, he says that the cruelty of others is tattooed into his psyche by years of tiny needling prizes. Um, but on the other hand, the flatmate best friend that I mentioned earlier, Lizette, is very much the opposite, and she kind of comes across as though, I assume, or she appears to be happy with herself, and she wants Emmett to kind of be himself. She says that he is who he is, and he does shouldn't need to have to lose um, this weight because that's who he is. So, but without
Yeah.
giving too much away from the book, did the character of Lizette did that come from you wanting to provide a specific kind of contrast to Emmett and what he's going through, or did you want it to come more from a place of wanting to echo people who prefer to mask their own kind of shame with some kind of bravado or nonchalance to kind of pretend that everything's okay?
Mhm. I wanted, I created the character of Lizette to be a counterpoint to Emmett's self-hatred. I didn't want readers to be able to dismiss Emmett because it felt like I was having a one-sided conversation about fat, where like I didn't want people to think that I was saying this is what all fat people are like and how they feel about their bodies and how they move through the world. So I definitely wanted to have another character. But she also represents the body positivity movement. So
Right.
I feel like Emmett is stuck between these two poles. On one side you have Lizette and the body positivity movement that is just sort of blithely saying, "Oh, you should love yourself. Fat is beautiful."
Hmm.
It doesn't like the health aspect doesn't matter, or it's fake, or we're healthy. It's like it doesn't really resonate with him. He maybe feels like he should be more accepting of himself, but he struggles with that. And then on the other side of the spectrum, he has like the very fat phobic society that is constantly telling him he's too big, he's unhealthy, he's going to drop dead of some chronic disease at some point. He's like fat people are dragging society down with their health needs. He's sort of caught in the middle. And I think Lizette is very important as a character for showing him sort of like in this tug of war between these messages. And it's why he's so nuanced and like his thinking is so complex. And it's why his behavior is complex. It's why he can't walk into a room. He walks into a room and is like critical of some fat people, but also feels insecure because he's grappling with these two ways of thinking. And yeah, so that is really where he finds himself. That's why he finds himself in such a dead end in his life. Like he needs to reach for this drug,
Hmm.
this clinical trial, because he needs something to help pull him out of this state of arrested development or just
Yeah.
sort of limbo.
Uh-huh. I mean, we touched earlier on kind of social media, but I want to talk a little about kind of media in general. The book really highlights how media, whether it be film, TV, social media, etc., it can be as addictive as it is because it kind of reassures us about our humanity. This is something that said you say in the book specifically that it reassures us about our humanity by stripping it away from other people, whether it be I don't know, Big Brother, something that I'm watching on the television at the moment. And I get these people with these just stupid arguments about stupid, crazy things, and just showing themselves up. These kind of things, kind of really, the kind of all their humanity is stripped away from them. So, I mean, you have specifically mentioned bad rom-coms in the book that you feel that these stories are really insulting because and detached from reality because they might as well be shelved in the fantasy section in the library. Um, so the fact that we keep consuming media that's so clearly out of touch with real human experience is clearly real fuel for some of the anger in this book, I felt. Aside from that, was it also the reason why you decided to use kind of this mixed media epistolary type format?
Um, I don't know if I didn't think consciously of the mixed media. I think I like being able to show different angles on a character, especially when we're rooted in one character's perspective so deeply as we are in Emmett's through his third person narration. Um, I liked being able to see not just how he thinks in his head when he's moving through the world, but how he's projecting himself out into
Right.
the world through his social media. He also has a sort of weight loss blog that he's maintained on and off. So we get a lot of his backstory in first person through these blog posts. Um, we also see him writing, he does health journals as part of this clinical trial that he has to submit to the biosciences company that's running the trial. So again, we're seeing him project himself out in a different way. I think it's just interesting to to get more insight into just how he wants to be seen. I think that's it really comes down to how he wants to be seen by society
Yeah.
and the validation he gets from being seen through social media, especially as he starts to lose weight and he's getting a lot more engagement. He's getting lots of followers. He's becoming hashtag weight loss inspo, weight loss
Yeah.
goals. Um, I wanted to see it from both angles, and I think having inserting these different documents and these different multimedia elements is a fun way to be able to do that.
Mhm. It made it feel all, it just made it really kind of grounded it even more, made it feel real, kind of like almost like found footage
Mhm.
type. And
Yeah.
something, I mean, something that I just kind of came to mind now is when he's writing, he's kind of, he's documenting what he's going through in these reports that he has to send to the doctors, to the physicians.
Yeah.
He's very, very upfront. He doesn't, it's full of expletives, full of potty mouth explanations and everything, almost like he's talking on social media, maybe even more open there than he is on social media. Was there any specific reason why you wanted him to be so direct and kind of in the face of the doctors who were treating him?
I mean, I think so when he's doing the clinical trial, he's under an NDA and he's not allowed to talk about the trial. And so the health journals he has to submit kinds of become his blog or his social media. Like he can't put it out into the public sphere about
Yeah,
what he's going through. So he's going to use these health journals as a way to do that. And I think as a character, Emmett is always seeking, he wants to be liked and he wants to be like, I think by being funny and you sort of see him on social media being a little bit toxically positive in a way that he isn't in his daily life. Like he's
yeah,
um, maybe a little more sensitive or a little more serious about things. But when he gets on social media, he has
yeah.
a different personality. He's using emojis. He's,
Emoticons, yeah, and all those things, yeah.
yeah. So, I guess I wanted the health journal to be an extension of the public sphere for him because he's projecting himself out into the scientific community, the medical community, as well as the sort of social media. I just think maybe he sees them all as the same. Like he sees that as the world, as the public, and he wants to be viewed in a certain way. He wants to be liked. But he is very honest because, I mean, I guess yeah, no, I don't, I don't know. I don't know why. Maybe that's coming from me because like I again write from like a very honest place.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, I do think he gets some validation from maybe being seen in that way.
I don't know. I just I kind of when I was reading it, I felt it was just kind of like like you said because he can't. He's got this NDA that he has to stick to.
Mm.
It was just like the way that he could vent things was through this kind of journal with the physicians and the kind of the medical team. And even though
Hmm.
they are professionals, he was like he couldn't care less. Didn't cut back in kind of the words and the things that he says to them. Yeah,
No, I mean, I guess Emmett probably that was probably a good outlet for him too.
yeah.
Like he really doesn't have a lot of people in his life to talk to about what's going on.
Yeah, because
Maybe
even he can't even speak to his family or even his
right.
closest friend, really. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's pouring his heart out into those journals for sure.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, so a couple to that, talking about the doctors and the physicians, I want to talk a little about the medical side of things. Obviously, with that, I don't want to give too much away, but it's kind of there's a drug there that can, or there's a treatment there. It's not just a drug. There's a treatment there that can help him. Um, Ozempic is obviously, like you said, you thought of this well before Ozempic became the thing that it is now. But I'm quite curious what kind of research you did into this, because it's definitely felt kind of, it had me it reminded me of kind of things like the MK Ultra programs and these kind of things. Was that something that inspired you, and what kind of research did you do to kind of create this guinea pig study that we follow Emmett through in the book?
Yeah, I mean it's a little bit different than an Ozempic, as you say, because it's not just a drug, it's a drug that's paired with a gene therapy. Um, I did some research. I really started from a point of like, okay, medically or scientifically, what is happening, what has to be happening in Emmett's body for him to lose weight at this pace? And not saying that this is like scientifically accurate, but for me, like it made sense for him to have a supercharged metabolism that
Right.
like he couldn't keep up with it. And that didn't feel like something that could happen from a drug. Like that felt like something that you'd have to change his DNA. And that is sort of so that's how I happened upon gene therapy as a way to
Yeah.
sort of rewrite his genetics and his DNA, and then have it be activated by the drug that he has to take on a consistent basis. I will say
Uh-huh.
I'm not a scientist, and
Yeah.
I had fun with those elements. I think, I definitely researched clinical trials. I do work for a biomedical research institute now.
Oh, right. I didn't know that. Uh-huh.
I didn't when I started writing, when I drafted the book, but I did after. So that gave me a little bit more insight into how clinical trials work and things like that. Um, but I didn't, I did not read tons of books about weight loss drugs and how they work, because that's not what the book is about. I mean,
It pulls you out of the story as well. If you get too technical, if it's not important to the story, which it isn't here.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the story was really, it's a satire. Like it's a social satire about fatness. It's an emotional, it's like there's a literary fiction element to it, and that it's so character driven, and
Yeah.
we go so deep with Emmett's story and his psychology. So, I mean, those are the things that I really wanted to come out and really wanted the reader to focus on. So no, the scientific is light and fun and
Yeah.
is a jumping off point for this story.
Uh-huh. Talking of light and fun, there's a lot of, I was not expecting it at all. There's a lot of Pokemon references in there. It's kind of like, I felt as though, it doesn't explicitly say that, but I felt as though Emmett got into playing on Pokemon as kind of a shield to protect himself from kind of what he's felt ever since he was a kid. Um, like a comfort blanket almost that he still wears to this day. No, I'm quite curious. Was that a reflection of your own love of Pokemon? Or maybe you went through the same kind of sensation and kind of got on the Game Boy because of that, or was that more of a kind of direct inspiration or reasoning behind kind of referencing that world in the book?
I did love Pokemon
Yeah,
as a kid.
you did.
Uh, I really did. I really got into sort of Game Boy games and Pokemon cards and the movies and all of that. Yes, that was taken from my childhood. But I thought too about why I loved Pokemon so much and why Emmett would be drawn to it, because he could have
Uh-huh.
been obsessed with anything. And for me, Pokemon was special because Emmett, during his childhood, like he felt so vulnerable. Like he felt he was being bullied at home and at school, and often felt like the adults in his life were not stepping forward to protect him in the way that he should have. And Pokemon as a game, you have these creatures, these pocket monsters that you throw out and they defend you, right?
Uh-huh.
They fight your battle for you.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was just sort of a perfect metaphor encapsulating how like a perfect fantasy for him to be able to throw this little creature out and they're going to go fight his battles. They're going to defend him. Um, and make him feel less vulnerable. And so that's why when he's younger in some of these blog posts, we see him sort of living in that fantasy.
Yeah.
And when he's feeling under attack, he almost imagines, he has a Pokemon to throw them
Yeah.
out and
What they will do.
defend.
Yeah.
It just it felt perfect for him to sort of sum up how he experienced his childhood.
Uh, and for non-Pokemon fans, I've never been a fan of Pokemon or anything. There's absolutely no reason why people should be put off from reading the book because of that. Because I just devoured all of that just as much as the rest of the book. You don't need to know anything about it. It's like these films about Formula One or football or whatever. You don't have to be a fan to kind of love it. And this the same is the case here. This you explain it perfectly, like you just said there. These Pokemon are kind of like these powers that he imagines defend him
Mm.
in specific kind of moments of the book, and it just works really, really well. Yeah.
I also think it's such a millennial touch point,
Yeah.
and it is such a millennial. Yeah, on a lot of levels, I see when I see reader reviews, a lot of them get very excited about the Pokemon in a way that I wouldn't expect because it's not a huge part of the book at all. It's just
No.
sort of in the background of his
Yeah.
life, but
No,
it's
but like
funny.
role playing games and those kind of things are really taking a big, really booming at the moment. I mean, Matt Dinniman's books are really I've not read Dungeon Crawler Carl, yeah, but those books are really taking off, for example. So those kind of things are really people get really excited about that stuff. Yeah.
Definitely.
Listen, before I let you go, obviously, I mean, you're promoting this book at the moment, but is there anything that you can tell us about what you're up to at the moment? Anything that you'd like to tease us with
Yeah.
at the moment?
So
It's coming soon.
I will have my next adult thriller will be coming in about a year in spring 2027, and I won't say too much about that yet. More details coming later this year. In July 2026, I have a story in an anthology called The Big Bad Book of Kaiju. So it is a
Right.
collection of stories about original, like giant monsters that are kaiju, so similar to like Godzilla and his enemies.
Uh-huh.
And that's being edited by Henry Hertz and Jonathan Mayberry, and it's out from Titan Books in
Ten
July.
books, right. Uh-huh.
Yeah, keep an eye out for that one.
Uh-huh. And before I forget, I always love to ask. This isn't it's not a physical copy. I've I just put it on top of another book. But how involved are you how involved were you with the artwork for this one? Because I mean, it wasn't. I didn't really know what the book, what the that picture kind of depicted. But once I read the book, it couldn't be a better. There couldn't be a better cover than that one.
It is brilliant. I love the cover, and I didn't have a huge amount to do with it. I mean, I did. Um, like the original cover, we made some changes from the original cover. Like we ended up asked for it to be a little bloodier. So it's a little
Right.
bloodier than the original one, and
A
the
little
font
jammier.
is different. Yeah, a little jammier. The font is a bit more threatening, it has this sort
Yeah.
of like dagger-like quality to it, which I think gives you this sort of sinister element. It's just perfect. I really do love it. It feels iconic, weirdly. It just feels
Yeah.
like I can't believe there hasn't been a bloody donut in the past.
But it's one of the things that I didn't realize I needed. But no, honestly, I honestly didn't get it. But once I read the book, it just makes so much sense, and it couldn't be better. Uh-huh.
Mm, yeah.
Talking of the cover, will there be any special editions or signed editions or anything like that? Because I'm going to get myself a physical copy, of course. But will there be any special editions or signed editions? Because I would love to get my hands on one of those.
So you can pre-order a signed personalized copy through Mysterious Galaxy Bookstore. It's a local
Okay.
indie bookstore here in San Diego.
I'll put a link underneath. Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So that's where I'm doing signed editions. There will be some other things that will be announced later
Right.
uh, through, book clubs and things like that. But right now there aren't any. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Mysterious Galaxy is probably the best place.
Fantastic. Yeah, but like I said, I can't wait to get my hands on it. I mean, I've read it already, but I can't wait to have a physical copy because I loved it so much. It's such a great book.
You.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cool.
And it will, yes, it will be coming out in other territories as well. So keep an eye out for those announcements soon.
Definitely. Fantastic. Well, listen, Luke, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for a fantastic book. Like I
Thank
said, I
you.
loved it to bits. I wish you the best of luck when it comes out. And I hope to catch up with you again sometime soon.
All right, sounds good. Thank you so much. This has been
No,
great.
thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. All right, have a good day. Take care. Cheers now. Bye now.